when I came back, I don't think I was really ready to sit down with my grandfather was gone, my grandmother, my mother, and father when they said, "Well, how was it?" And I said, "I
Wow.
really, I really, I'm
Yeah.
not ready to tell you how it was because you're not going to believe it, and I really don't want to relive it right now." And I had a couple of buddies who had gone before me into the Marine Corps and were up at Quezon and Way City, and they got me out of there. The night that I came home, the next morning, we went up, started in Maine, and climbed Mount Katahdin, Mount Washington, the Liberty Range for about a week. And then I went back home and said, okay,
Yeah.
I'm okay, and you can ask me anything you want. So that was no problem. Um, I did not, I did not get spit upon, but um, there was a general feeling in Boston that you did not walk around in uniform.
Yeah.
That was a non-starter.
Battle Line podcast. You guys heard the top of the show. You see the title. We are joined by Bruce Doc Norton, third Force Recon Company veteran, first Force Recon Company Vietnam veteran, and Navy veteran. And yeah, you're gonna learn a lot this episode. So yeah, keep it here.
I was, I always having Vietnam guys on, World War II guys, just the stories that they have that we're losing because they're not teaching it in schools where they need to be teaching it as far as history and those stories, tremendous intestinal fortitude, the never quit um, attitudes that they had, the just the ability to overcome so much adversity that man, if we need that in any time, it's now. And so I love talking to the Vietnam One, World War II vets, and I wish we had some World War One vets we could get on, but sadly, I don't think there's a lot of them out there. But yeah, it'd be an honor to have a WW1 vet on too, if there's still any left out there, brother.
Yeah, I agree. It's not World War II veteran per se, but I there is one guy I came across who has an Instagram and like does speaking events who's a Holocaust survivor, and I'm like, man, we got to get this guy
That
on.
would be
So
that
there's
that would be awesome. That would
yeah.
be. I'd love to hear his story if we could, man. Yeah, Ian, work your magic, brother. Work your magic. Let's get him
Yeah, I
on.
see that he still does events. So, any of these guys, I mean, if you look back in the archive, Vincent Speranza, it's probably the last interview he ever did
Yeah.
was with us. And man, what an honor to be able to say that we sat down with him for 2 hours.
And
And
if you haven't heard that episode, listen to it, guys. It was great, and I think I laughed so hard too. Just the stories that he had, but yeah, listen to that episode, guys, and I guarantee you, you'll want to hear more. I just wish we could get more. They're just they're passing every day, more and more
yeah.
passing. So we're doing our best to keep the stories alive and keep them archived for the future, but it's just sadly we're not able to get all of them that we like, but we'll do our best. And Ian, yeah, I said, work your magic, man. Let's get him on. Let's get the Holocaust survivor on. I'd love to hear that. I know people need to hear those stories. I need to
Yeah.
hear those stories. Yeah, yeah.
I fully agree, man. So, all right, just two pieces of news before we get into this. I'm a big fan of the air shows. I got to tell you, I go to the Memorial Day Air Show every year, and I was a little bit saddened to learn that the A-10C Thunderbolt 2 demo team, they're going to be doing their farewell tour. They're calling it. And all their dates are on their Instagram. Harold, if you kind of scroll them down on the screen here, if you go to at A10 Demo Team on Instagram, and I don't know exactly why, because I mean it's they have 195,000 followers. Every time I go to the air shows, those guys
Hmm.
really do their best to speak to everybody. They have their own merch. They're very approachable. And so all I know is this is your last chance to see them.
Yeah.
So if they're coming to your area and they're doing a number of dates, go see them. They're awesome.
And just go to the air shows in itself. Just air shows are
I
cool
love
in
the air
itself.
shows.
They're fun. They remind me of the old, I don't want to say carnivals, but like the old fairs. We used to go to fairs as a kid. It's what it's like. You got tents, you got fairs everywhere. A lot. Ours used to be at Offutt, so it was at the air base there in Omaha, and you get a chance to be on the base, so you can go to the PX and you can do all the other stuff, not just the air shows. But then they also had all
Yeah.
the little, the tents and the places you could go see, and the gut trucks, the food trucks.
Yeah.
It's just a great experience.
It's a
It's like
very
going to
patriotic
it
event.
is, and it's like going to a fair, a patriotic fair with a lot of cool jets and airplanes flying around, and it's fun. I take my kids to it. We had a blast. So yeah, that's too
Yeah.
bad to hear. I don't know. Yeah, I wonder why, but sometimes things run their course, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, so go see them. I'll see them one last time on Memorial Day or Memorial Day weekend here at Jones Beach. Other quick piece of news here. I just wanted to mention the passing of Senator Joe Lieberman. And really the reason I wanted to mention it actually was BK, who is a friend, although he's never been on the show. He's been invited on the show, and he has a very popular podcast. So I don't know, maybe at some point we'll get him on.
I
But I saw that BK tweeted out, I escorted Joe Lieberman to several very high level meetings in Baghdad as a contractor. A very nice man who took the time to chat with us lowly security guys and ask how we were doing, where we were from, etc. A true gentleman, RIP. And I just figured I'd bring that up because, I mean, you know better than anyone. Sometimes you meet politicians and
yeah,
they're the biggest douchebags. And I think it just says a lot, the fact that the guy, like, treated him
yeah.
like another,
Uh,
human being. So,
I don't know, BK. Yeah, I said I told Ian when he said it, like, guys, I don't know much about Lieberman either, so I don't really have much to say about it. I mean, whatever. If he BK, whatever experience he had, great. You've known him probably better than I do. I'd go on BK's show if he asked.
yeah,
Um,
I don't think he even does interviews. BK always does like world. He's very much I guess I would compare him to Greg Gutfeld in that he kind of covers like world events and news and he just has a very funny slant
funny,
on all of it. That I think he rarely interviews people, but I've asked him to come on before and he always
come
kind of blows
on.
it off. I feel like he likes I think he just if you follow BK on Twitter, I feel like he does his podcast and then he likes to go tanning living in San Diego on the beach and like that's it. It's hard to get him to do other
Hey,
things.
it's Air Force, dude. It's me.
Yeah.
It's all about me. Look at and you could even give me shit on your podcast for me saying that Air Force, but whatever you want, go get tan. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm would Ian bring it up? That's and you're right. There are politicians. When I was working with State Department doing the protection, I had a very I didn't like many of them. I ain't gonna lie to you and say I did. I didn't. I thought most of the ambassadors and when we had the CODELs, the co-op, the Congress delegations, the Congress people coming, Senator Warner and all they were they were just what you think they are. But there was one, the deputy chief of mission, when I was running his detail with the State Department back in 2005. His name was James Jeffrey. And that was one politician, one person within the State Department that was actually tremendous. And I think, he was also in Vietnam. So maybe that's why he understood the guys he was running. He was one of those ones that DCM, the Chargé Day affairs, when Negroponte left, he was the ambassador before Zalmay Khalilzad came in. And that guy, he was awesome. I mean, it was a breath of fresh air having somebody who actually spoke the language and didn't try to talk down to you and
Mm.
understood that his life depended on us getting in front of the bullet to save him. And we did have an incident where we did actually save his life without him not even knowing it. We lost a couple civilians because of it, but one of those things where he was walking, he would come and actually even have a beer with us every once in a while, and that just didn't happen, especially back in those Blackwater days. So I'm glad you mentioned it because it did bring back a good memory I had with a politician and by the names of James Jeffrey, and it brought a smile to my face. And I even have a picture of me giving him a Blackwater coin when he came and had a beer with us on his last day. You know what? Maybe I'll post that picture one of these days. It
Yeah, if
just
you have it, I could have Harold throw it up.
yeah, I got it. It was somebody.
Text it over. We'll have Harold
Yeah,
put
I
it on
will.
screen.
And if he's still out there, and Mr. Jeffrey, if you're out there and you want to come on the show, please, I'd be more than happy to. And he's still out there, one of the top State Department individuals. He might have retired, but he's got a hell of a lot of stories. He's been to a lot of places with the foreign service office at State Department. So I bet he'd have some great stories. I'd love to have him on and he probably don't even remember me. I was a lot younger back then, but yeah, great guy. But I'm glad you mentioned it. And BK, thanks for, just being a good dude. And whether you like politics or not, saying something nice about someone that takes a lot of humility. So even though you're Air Force, you got a little humility in you. There you go.
Hey, so before we get to this interview, longtime partner, Bubs Naturals, and sometimes when I talk about
Yeah,
supplementation, yes, you have the shirt on.
got the shirt on today.
Yeah,
Hey, look at that.
I have that shirt too, and actually the new merchandise has been cool, but
It is.
I got to order some of that. But yeah, I was gonna say whenever I post stuff about Bubs, there's always someone in the comments being like, "You don't need that stuff. All you need is a healthy diet." And like, look, if all you have is a healthy diet and you're exercising, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, obviously, but collagen should be part of your diet, and you're not really getting that collagen in whatever you're eating. So that's why it's dietary supplementation. You need that collagen for bone health, for skin health, for hair health, nails, all of
Well,
that. So
unless you're going to
eat a
just go
clean
go
diet
out.
and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're going out and eating raw cowhide, you're not getting the collagen that you need as you get older. And I'm 53. I said I can tell the difference when I'm taking it, and then when I take if I can't, if I'm traveling a ton. Luckily now we've got the travel. I've got all the travel pouches, so they're with me. But back when we first started doing the episodes, I couldn't take it with me unless I took the whole tub, and that got to be a pain in the butt for a while. And so I'd get off for 2 weeks, and I can tell that my fingernails aren't growing. I can tell when my hair doesn't feel as thick as it did when I'm on it and I'm using the collagen every day. Or if you don't like the collagen, then get the Fountain of Youth. That mixes up right well with the milk, and it tastes like a blueberry daiquiri. I mean, drink that. You can tell the difference, and it does definitely help you in the gym, helps your recovery, and it does help your joints. And guys, I'm 53. I know I wear medium shirts, but I can tell when I'm using Bubs and when I'm starting to get in shape, and I'm consistently using it, and I feel great. And that Fountain of Youth is tremendous because it has like 1,000 grams of vitamin C. It's an immunosupport supplement as well. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to take it, but if you want to feel good and you want to get stronger in the gym, and you want to slow down Father Time, I'd recommend you take it. And I here am a living example of that. And I swear by Bubs. And also because they also give to Glenn Dorter Memorial Foundation, which of course I support 110%.
Yeah. So bubsnaturals.com. Use the promo code BattleLine and you're going to get 20% off your first purchase with them. I know a lot of you guys have been with them for a while and are regulars, you subscribe or you have stuff on auto ship. But if you've never ordered from them before, get on it now. Bubsnaturals.com. Use the promo code BattleLine and you'll get 20% off your first purchase. With that, let's get over to Bruce Doc Norton.
From Kansas City to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Switch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
You know, Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The Switch is on, Battle Line Podcast, and we're really thrilled to be joined by Bruce Doc Norton. This guy is a wealth of history, third Force Recon Company and first Force Recon Company Vietnam veteran, also a Navy veteran. You were suggested to us by our friend Kirk Spradley, who was on the podcast. And
Tadpole.
even though we're 233 episodes in, believe it or not, Kirk Spradley's the only Marine Force Recon vet we ever had on the show. So we got to talk a little bit about that with him. But, you know, he's a guy who's experienced it. You not only experienced it, but you have 15 books under your belt written as a Marine Corps veteran on the Marine Corps history. So you're truly a subject matter expert, and we're excited to get into all of this with you. And thanks for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. And fire away with questions. I'm doing my best to answer them.
Yeah, Doc, I think first and foremost, just since first time on the show, is just telling people about your history. Always, and I like to hear that. Why'd you join? Where'd you get in?
Okay.
And the funny stuff too. Not just the serious bravado, because
Sure.
most of this, there's so much jackassery that goes on, and that's how you get through it. But yeah, just start from the beginning. What made you decide to join, and how was that basic training back in the day, back when it was hard? And that's how it always, how it is. It's always harder.
Okay.
But
So I'll begin. My last job at Quantico was oral historian with the history division. So I get to interview a number of Marines. And so we had a set script of what's your background, how did you get to where you are. So I'm very comfortable in answering that question.
Okay.
I was born March 3rd, 1948 in Providence, Rhode Island. I grew up in a little town called North Scituate, a very rural area. Scituate's claim to fame is the reservoir that provides the drinking water for the city of Providence. So all of that was off limits, but the only thing that kept us from crossing over onto the reservoir property was a stone wall. So when you're 7 or 8 or 9 years old, there's no limit. Back in the day, you could fish, you could camp out, with your friends, and your parents knew where you were. There was no trouble. We all knew how to swim, and it was just a great experience growing up.
Yeah, back in the good old days. Yeah, being able to I could walk a mile to the Rio Grande River. Parents didn't care. Take the dog, take the lab, walk a mile, and go shoot
Get home for
catfish.
dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Dang, those are good old days. Yes, sir.
So my dad background was my grandfather had been in World War One. He was with
Wow.
Charlie Company, 101st Field Signal Battalion.
Wow.
He was a wireman. So to go off on a tangent on him for a minute, his name was Raymond Whitney Maker, and he came from Massachusetts. He got into France in October of 1917. He was at Belleau Wood. He was gassed at Chateau Thierry and wounded outside of Verdun. And as a keepsake, he sent home to his sister the key to the north gate of Verdun.
Wow.
So when he passed away, my grandmother gave that key and 134 of his letters to his sister, my Aunt Eva. She was a nurse in Massachusetts back then, a horse-drawn buggy as a traveling nurse. And my mother gave me all of my grandfather's letters in that key. So on Armistice Day, Veterans Day, if you would, 2018, I returned that key to the mayor of Verdun and the director of the Verdun War Memorial at 11 o'clock on the 11th of November. And there were
when did you get those letters, Doc? When was it before you decided to go into the
Oh
military?
yeah, this was afterwards, after I was already in the Marine Corps. So anyway, my grandfather rarely spoke about World War One. But what was fascinating was my uncle married a girl named Elsa Britsch, and her parents had left Germany prior to Hitler coming in and immigrated to the United States. So the Britches were invited to my grandparents' home for Thanksgiving. And during conversation, Mr. Britsch, who had a very thick German accent, had said, where were you in 1918? And he said, well, Verdun. He's part of the Meuse-Argonne offensive. He said, well, so was I. My grandfather said, well, you sons of bitches gassed me back in July. And he said, well, I owe my life, this is Mr. Britsch, to the United States Army because you gassed us, and I was left for dead on the battlefield until Army medics picked me up and brought me to a company aid station, saved his life. And they became close friends, fishing buddies, and that kind of thing. It was just amazing for us to listen.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah.
And old guys talk about World War One. So
it's amazing.
It was fascinating.
So
You know,
yeah, guys, you think it happened today? You tried Taliban and a GWAT vet. Hey, you tried to kill me. Now you tried to and let's go fishing. That shit doesn't happen. It
yeah.
you never see that
So
happen now.
my
It's
dad was in the
crazy.
Army, World War II. He was 198th Coastal Artillery in Fox Battery, uh, was on Guadalcanal, spent 18 arduous months on Bora Bora.
Wow. That was
Yeah,
just, I bet that was terrible. Did he get a great tan? Got some good tan lines.
I saw pictures of my dad and some of these young girls that would, you know, travel around and meet all these guys. So, and then he was in the Philippines, Lady Gulf, and uh, and again, most of these guys did not really talk about it very much. I mean, you really had to pry it out of them. They
Sure.
had, you know, a kid wouldn't understand what they went through in World War II or World War One. So it was like,
And can I just say, like, from doing all these interviews, I realize, like, I feel like the younger generation of veterans are more open to talking about what they went through. And I don't know if it's that, like, therapy is more accepted and it's not as much about being a silent professional. But I mean, truthfully, usually guys of your era, Vietnam veterans, like, they're pretty reserved. They don't really talk about it much.
yeah, oh, I agree. So I had one uncle who was on board the Shangri-La during World War II
So,
carrier
yeah.
that was
Wow.
hit by kamikazes, and again, he lived in the same town as we did. And I mean, Rhode Island's very small, so no one was more than 45 minutes away. So family gatherings were not unusual. So I left high school and graduated 1966. Well, I went to school in Boston. And in my second year, it was not a place for me to be. But back then, every parent wanted their son to be in school because, you know, the war was really kicking in 1965, 66, and they didn't want little Johnny to come home in a box. So stay in school. And so I came home and my parents said, hey, you know, how's school? And I said, well, I'm not sure how school is now because I've enlisted. And you could have heard a pin drop, you know, and so many guys will tell the same kind of story. And he said, you enlisted in what? I said, I went down and joined the Marine Corps. And that, I've told the story in a couple of these books. The staff NCO that was supposed to be there didn't show up. And this Navy chief saw me sitting outside on a bench. And he should have hung me upside down with a fishing pole and said, look what I caught. But anyway, I enlisted in the United States Navy. I went to Great Lakes and then got orders to hospital corps school because I was in the kind of a pre-med program in Boston. And they figured, well, you know, if you get any kind of medical background, you'd
Yeah.
fit right in as a corpsman. So hospital corps school was at Great Lakes Naval Training Center. That was what they call an A school, your primary school
Yep.
to establish your MOS. And then I left there and went to Camp Lejeune to Field Medical Service School, and that's where you're taught how to function within a Marine rifle platoon. So that was a month plus, and the school was run by Marine NCOs and corpsmen who had all been to Vietnam, every one of them.
It was pretty intense. I mean, it had to be intense. I mean, it
Oh,
should be
sure.
an intense, extremely intense.
And you know, and I'll get into it in a second about you know what you learned and what you failed to learn. But follow-on orders brought me back to Rhode Island to Newport Naval Hospital. It was like I thought I was going to join the Navy and see the world, and they sent me back home. So I worked on a dirty surgery ward, and a couple of us had some, you know, college loans that needed to be repaid, and we said, look, we're not going to make it being a E2 or an E3 in the Navy. You volunteered for Vietnam, and right away that was accepted, and they gave us orders a couple of months later, and I showed up. Uh, I flew. Back then, you didn't go as a transplacement battalion or a company. You went by yourself. So I went out to California, Travis Air Force Base, over to
Right.
Okinawa for staging, and then all you were doing is sitting around waiting for a flight, a manifest with your name on it. So you landed. I did. You landed at Da Nang, and there were three big lines in the hangar that said First Marine Division with a big red arrow, Third Marine Division, and all others. So I had no idea where I was going. I went to the all other line, and this guy said, "Well, you have to report into the division surgeon, and he's with the Charlie Med Battalion. This is Third Marine Division up at Quang Tree." Well, I didn't know what Quang Tree was, and he said, "You have to go down this road, and you're going to go to a place called Teeny Weeny Airlines." That's what it was called, and it was Snoopy outside on this tin hut, and it was a C-130 COC. So you'd hop a flight up to Dong Ha, and then he said, "Well, you got to go down to the division surgeon's office, and he's a couple of miles down the road." So I'm walking, and this tank comes down the road. The guy said, "Where you headed?" I said, "Division surgeon at Charlie Med." He said, "Well, hop on." So now I'm on the outside of a tank going down the road, and I get off, and there's a tent, and it said division surgeon. And being naive kid, I thought I was going to meet a surgeon. Well, it wasn't going to happen. So I met some second class petty officer, Pogue, sitting in a tent, and he said, "Come on in." And he said, "Have a seat." He looked at my record and he said, "Can you swim?" I said, "Yeah, I can swim." He said, "Are you afraid of height?" And I said, "Well, I don't think anyone likes to be up on top of a 10-story building, but it doesn't really bother me too much." And he said, "Well, the reason I'm asking you is last night we lost a corpsman over at Third Force Recon in a rocket attack. He was pretty badly wounded and got medevaced out. We need to replace him. You have to volunteer." I said, "Well, I came here. I've got 13 months to do. Let's go." So he said,
Wow.
"Okay."
Don't you have to don't you love that? You have to volunteer.
Yeah,
Hear that?
it was a volunteer because it was
You-
kind of risky business, and they just didn't take um, anybody. And
Sure.
the requirements for the Marines were very, very strict. I mean, you had to be in top physical condition, sharp, able to read a map and speak English, kind of thing. And with the corpsmen, they would just grab you and say, "Okay, you're coming with us." And that's pretty much the way it was. I checked in uh, the Third Force Recon. The company commander was Alex Lee. Um, the first sergeant was Lonnie B. Henderson. He was 6'8". He had been a ski instructor up at Bridgeport. And it was odd because you're standing there, he's seated at his desk, and you're at eye level with him, and you're thinking, what's wrong with this picture? But I think one of the most remarkable guys was the operations officer, and you can read about him. His name is Clovis C. Kaufman, Bucky Kaufman. He was a first lieutenant. He'd come up from the ranks from private up to company gunny. I think he made first sergeant, but he got a battlefield commission. When I met him, he was a first lieutenant in the OPSO in Third Force. He had already been awarded the Navy Cross, 3 Silver Stars, 5 Bronze Stars, and 7 Purple Hearts.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
He retired out as a colonel. But these guys were so good because they were teachers, and their whole ideology, as far as we were concerned, were you're in a father-son relationship or a teacher-student. I'm not a major, and you're just a dumbass Lance Corporal. You bring something to the company, and I will help teach you. And you bring something that I don't know. Whatever skill you have, I'm sure I don't know about it. And when you're in a team, you will each train one another in your particular skill. Radioman, corpsman, team leader, map and compass, sketching, all of these different things, or as a diver, or as a guy that's an advanced parachutist. So it was a comfortable place because once you're in a team, you did everything together. You ate, slept, all in the same area. So you get to these guys were closer than your brother. You knew everything about them, and they knew pretty much everything about you. So I get in there on a Sunday, and on Wednesday morning, I was going out across the DMZ as part of a 7-man reconnaissance team. The sergeant, his name was Chapman, later became sergeant major. Uh, he led the team, and during the course of, I think it was 6 days, we'd gone into a North Vietnamese bunker complex, discovered a series of bunkers full of mines. Then we get into a couple of firefights. We would chase for 3 days. We were in a bomb crater overnight. And then to get extracted, then it was CH-46s. CH-46, we were going to get extracted and took an RPG round in the back, cowling by the rear rotors. And the pilot, co-pilot, and crew chief ran off the helicopter. And this thing started to fill with smoke. And Chapman said, grab the 50 cals. And there was another helicopter because they always landed with a backup.
Yeah.
And we ran onto the back of that thing and lifted off. And then Phantoms came in and destroyed that 46. And this is the first mission.
Well, that's what I say. That was your first firefight. That was your
first. That was it.
That was your first two-A. What was, kid? You're getting there. I know you're with some salty guys, which it does help when you're with some senior guys that have probably been through it before. Really, but what was going through your head? Where you're like, "Holy shit! Is it? I just got here, and here."
Well, they had said, "Look, we don't know you, and you don't know us, and we're going to tell you that there was no talking. You did not speak. It was all hand on arm signals,
Sure,
maybe
course,
a whisper if something came up, but there was no conversation, no radio. No one had a transistor radio, no sunglasses. It was all chemied up, and you were told when to move, when to sit, when you were going to eat, and when you were going to sleep. And if you snored, you slept with a gas mask on.
Yeah.
So you learned these things very, very quickly because your life depended upon it. You learned how to put out claymore mines, how to use what was called a PSID, which is a personnel seismic intrusion device. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this or not, but the PSID, you'd put them out northeast, south, and west, and you monitored that PSID on another receiver on your radio handset. So what it was a sensor spindle in the ground, and if you stepped on the ground, it would beep. So the first one, let's say it was northeast, south, and west. The first one would beep twice. East would beep 3 times.
Yeah.
South would beep 4, and west 5. So if you heard this beep, 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 you knew someone was coming from the north toward you. And behind each PSID, you'd put a claymore mine. And you'd run the hell boxes back to your harbor site where you're going to spend the night.
Mm-hmm.
And if it double beeped and went from 2 beeps to 3, you knew they had crossed in concentric circles from north, now headed east. So that was just a protection layer to have this electronic gear, which was back then state of the art. So, and you could use it underwater as well as above ground. The only drawback was artillery vibrations would set it off.
Okay. Yeah.
Or rain. So during the monsoon, we learned very quickly, was it raindrops or foot drops? But so you came up to speed very quickly. These guys were all excellent teachers because, if you've got 6 guys and one guy is sick or injured or wounded or dead, now you've lost your capability by 50% because 2 guys are going to be carrying that injured guy.
Yeah, at minimum.
And your effectiveness is lost. And then if you call in a medevac, well, your team is exposed.
You just gave up your position. You gave up
him. Yeah. They'll take him out because he's a liability. And now you've got to run, for 2 clicks to get away from the fact that you've been exposed. And they'll come looking for you. So all those things worked out pretty well. And I think by October, I'd had 9 missions. And because that was July, August, September. And I had written about events that occurred in the first book that I did, Force Recon Diary 69. And the second book was Force Recon Diary 70, which was second throw with First Force. So The training was excellent. The support was excellent. Um, when we went into the Ashore Valley in November of 1969, the 3rd Marine Division had left Vietnam. It was only the 1st Marine Division was left in country. We went with 2nd and 17th Air Cav, and they were warrant officers flying Hueys, slicks. And we thought these guys were the greatest guys in the world. They were as old as we were. They'd show up wearing Stetsons, ascots, spurs, listening to Jimi Hendrix or Janis Joplin and Indica, and but they had balls like basketballs. They would tell you, if you guys hit the shit, we will come out and get you. And if you knew that if you were sick, wounded, injured some way, a guy was going to come out, in a Huey and pick you up and get you back to 85th Evac Hospital, 35, 40 miles away, morale was high and they would do it. They would say, if it's nighttime and we can fly, uh, you give us a mark while we're overhead, we'll throw on the landing lights and come straight down and pick you up, or put out a jungle penetrator and lift you up. That was a tremendous thing, because the beauty of that Huey was you could do false inserts, and the pilots would pretend to set you down in 3 or 4 places, and the NVA couldn't cover all those, and it'd drive them crazy. Where did they go? Did anyone get out? Did anyone see anyone get out? So that helped us out a lot. And to this day, we still have reunions with those guys in Nashville every 2 years. Last year, they took us out to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and the brigade was there. They're headquartered there now, 2nd and 17th.
Yeah.
And they had the entire brigade there. They welcomed us, red carpet, literally red carpet. And the brigade commander had every guy in that unit shake our hand as they marched, they walked past us. We just had a great time. So we are closely linked with the Army, and the successes that we had was due in great part to the United States Army, particularly uh, airborne. They were just super guys.
So, do you have anything specific that, just when you think about that, it's great stories that you've got that just stick out more than anything, working with the Cav, working with the Hueys? Because I remember reading stories, and then you watch We Were Soldiers Once and Young. That was those Huey pilots. Those were the guys that were just incredible, that I would say are the precursor to our Night Stalkers today, what we used. But is there anything just off the top of your head that was
well, I mean,
just
a couple of things happened. We were tasked to set up a radio relay site in the Ashore, and they had A6s come in, the intruder come in and blow off the top of the hill. And the first insert was going to be a couple of loaches flying around this mountaintop, and the first helicopter got hit with a 12.7, blew the head of the pilot in the back, and the co-pilot took it and pitched left and right. He got out, the pilot died, and the gunner on the right side died. They had, I think it was eight killed, because 2 helicopters went down on that hilltop. And the guys from 3rd Force stayed out there for 2 weeks and set up the 292, because they weren't going to come up this hill. It was steep, and they couldn't hit it with mortar fire, but they knew we were there. And all the patrols would radio back to that relay site, and the 292 would go back down to Phu Bai outside of Hue, and then down to Da Nang.
Wow.
So their courage was never questioned. I mean, it wasn't like that at all. They would sit there at the briefings and they tell us, okay, this is what we can do. You guys know that if the weather's bad, we can't fly. It's just part of the game. So a lot of times, if we were extended because of weather, the weatherbird would come out. They'd launch a weatherbird to come out and see how things were in the valley, and they would pick us up. So it was just it was a great relationship.
Just amazing.
Hope you're enjoying this episode with Bruce Doc Norton. We love getting Vietnam veterans on the show,
Yeah,
Force Recon guys, the second Force Recon guy on the show since we've been doing this. But before we continue, if you've been with us since the beginning, you know that Fort Scott Munitions has been with us since the beginning. FSM is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact, TUI, their trademark in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, but you'll get the best deal through us when you go to fsm.com and you use the promo code BattleLine for 15% off your order. So that's fsm.com. Promo code BattleLine, only available to listeners of the BattleLine podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, BattleLine Tactical, and the BattleLine podcast. I also got to tell you guys, anytime we bring up Photonus Defense on the podcast, our guests are always impressed. I remember we had Jade Struck on, and she's like, I don't think I've ever heard of a podcast with a night vision sponsor. And then even though they weren't sponsoring last week's episode, we brought it up to Rob O'Neill, and Rob said, man, I'd love to have Photonus on as a sponsor of my podcast. And I made the connection on the email, and I think they want to take on his show. So, I mean, who wouldn't want to be a sponsor on Rob's show? And also, who wouldn't want to be sponsored by Photonus?
Guys, I'm going to be actually going up to Lancaster. And I'm actually speaking. That's where I'm heading to speak to their conference next week. That's where I'm heading. And it says a lot about their company, the integrity of their company, the great guys they have there that have real world experience using night vision, and then just the dang brainiacs they have building night vision. But it says a lot of their company, which reflects in how good their products are. When you have good integrity within your company, your products are going to have integrity, and they're going to be the best on the market. And they are. They're the best night vision out there. So whether you're a hunter or whether you're running a department or you're with the military, if you want to have your guys come back home, or if you're a hunter and you want to be the most successful out doing whatever you're doing, coyote hunting, anything you're doing, hog hunting at night, you go to Photonus Defense. If you're not, then you're not supplying yourself with the best night vision on the market. And again, they just have great integrity within their company itself. And we're just blessed. I mean, we're extremely lucky, and I feel extremely lucky to have Photonus on with us and be using the best night vision that, I mean, I'm very blessed. I get to use the best night vision in the world. And it's just because of my relationship.
Teach courses on it.
And teach courses with, and have Phil Otto come in, who works with Photonus and was an old GRS buddy of mine, have him come out and teach as well. So we're blessed in that aspect, buddy. And yeah, I'd love to see Photonus branch out with more people on their podcast. But I have to admit, I kind of like being the one of the only one. I'm being selfish, man. But yeah, they're going to blow up, and they're going to obviously be with more operator type podcasts, people that can speak on it, because that is who they supply. And the top line hunters who like to hunt at night, especially with hogs and coyotes. Great company, great product, best night vision in the world by far.
Yeah, very, very well said. So now you can have the superpower to see in the dark with the Viper Binocular Night Vision System by Photonus Defense, which is the global leader in night vision solutions, providing more high-quality night vision capabilities than anyone. Military, law enforcement, and public safety end users utilize Photonus Defense solutions to give them the edge at night in tactical situations and rescue operations. Hunters, shooters, boaters, and enthusiasts can rely on the Photonus Defense Viper Binocular to become masters of darkness. The new Viper Binocular system carries the same features and benefits as the Photonus Defense Viper Monocular, with a ruggedized body, and harnesses the power of the Echo Intensifier tubes, giving you sharper images, reduced halo, and industry-leading ultra-fast auto-gating across the range of dynamic operating conditions. Visit photonusdefense.com for more information, or look for Photonus Defense product options from your night vision dealer. That's spelled Photonis Defense.com. photonisdefense.com. Check them out. And with that, let's get right back to this great interview with Bruce Doc Norton.
Now you're being Doc, you being the medic. I know we relied on you, medics, and even almost overwhelmed at times, just trying to keep everybody just normal day to day, just keeping everybody functional. But how did you? You're telling those stories again. You saw a lot of carnage. We looked to you to see if we were going to get through it or not. So how do you do that? How do you yourself
Well,
display that
you know,
courage when you're like, holy crap, I've got 3 guys down right now, and we're all looking at you to make sure everybody's going to be okay so we can keep fighting. What goes through your head, or what did go through your head? And I know you got stronger as it went on, or you wouldn't be sitting with us today. So, where does it become where first day I got through it, and now the last deployment that I had to go through, it was it's habitual. It's just habitual training. I did it, and it was no big deal. Yeah, I'd like to.
the first thing that goes through your mind is on the flight going over your first time. And you're thinking, do I know enough to survive? Do I remember everything
Yeah.
they were supposed that I was supposed to learn? I don't know, they were supposed to teach me. So it was OJT. I mean, it was
Yep.
on the job training, but you remembered these things, and everyone carried a notebook. It was a green memorandum flip notebook. So all your radio frequencies were there for artillery, for air, who was in direct support, who was in general support, um, medevac frequency, fixed wing, Scarface was helicopter gunships, and
I still, Doc, I even still have mine. I haven't been around the green one. I've still got it in my tough box. It has all that
yeah.
stuff in it. Still to
So
this day. Yep.
so now you're thinking, okay, here's the case. First patrol out, that very first one I was on, this one guy, and I'll tell you his story in a minute. His name was James Furman, and he came down with we call prickly heat. It was just a sensation like pins and needles all over you when you start to scratch, and you would realize it in the summertime. It was so hot and humid, and you had on, wet clothing, wet utilities. He started to scratch, and of course, all that movement is a liability. You don't want to be scratching your arms and your face and your neck if you don't have to. So I told Chapman, we got to get him out of here. And he said, what do you got? I said, well, I can give him Benadryl, but it's going to make him tired.
Tired,
And that's
drowsy.
not going to help. I said, but I've got a bottle of calamine lotion. And he said, okay, paint him up. So we painted this guy pink, literally, and he got medevaced out. They brought in a helicopter, 46, and get him out of there. And the loop on that story was on the 5th, 6th, 7th of February 1970, the team that I'd been with for a year was ambushed. And I was not with the team. I'd been selected to go to scuba school. So I'm in the company rear in a classroom, and over the radio says, Team Snaky, that was our team, has been ambushed. Teddy Bishop from Lufkin, Texas, was killed. Arthur Garcia, he was from New Mexico. He was killed. And Furman, who was from York, Pennsylvania, a place called Red Lion, the night before he had gotten a cassette tape from his wife of the sounds of his son, who was born just around Thanksgiving. I mean, everyone listened to it, we thought, this will be a 4-day in and out, no big deal. And he was killed. And one of my best friend is a guy named Paul Kevaney. And Kevaney was a 27-year-old Lance Corporal in 3rd Force. He was M79 Grenadier. He was hit 5 separate times that morning. The first round, they had walked into pretty much an NVA company that was dug in. And he took the first round in the right leg, and that knocked him down. And then the ambush was sprung, and that's what killed. Garcia was walking point, then Bishop, and then Furman didn't get hit. He was carrying my Unit 1, my medical bag. And he was told by Kevin, go get the radio off of Bishop's body. And when he went out to get the radio, he was killed. Kevin takes the second round in the right arm, the third round in the left arm, the fourth round hit him in the right side and went out by his spine. And then the fifth round hit him in the 45 and set off 2 rounds in the magazine well. So he got the Silver Star, Purple Heart. He's alive and well. He's 83. He's my son's godfather, and I'm his son's godfather. And he's up in Boston.
I mean, how bad were the injuries? Is he a guy who was to be in a
That's
wheelchair?
the whole thing. No, no vital organs hit.
Wow.
And in fact, what was amazing was the 3 guys that were shooting at him ran up to him. He was propped up at the base of a tree, looked at him. 2 guys had AKs and turned around and ran back down the hill and didn't kill him.
Wow. What do you credit that to, or what do you think he credits that to? Do you think that's faith? And also, I mean, the survivor's guilt, that you're the guy who survived, that has to weigh a lot.
Well, all of us do, because 3 days earlier, another team had gone out and everyone was killed with the exception of 2 guys. This was a 7-man team. And to me, it's a fascinating story. They got on the ground, led by a staff sergeant named Chester Millette. There was a radio operator, a Lance Corporal named Charles T. Sexton, Tommy Sexton. So you know your H harness, and you've got your K-bar up on the left side, you get a compass, and then magazine pouches, grenades, and a first aid pouch and canteens. Tommy carried an M14. He gets in a kneeling position to return fire, and an AK round hits him in the day-night flare that's taped to the outside of the K-bar, goes through the day-night flare, goes through the K-bar blade, hits him in the chest, and ricochets back into the sheath. Sexton stacks up all these bodies, 6 of them, and fires every man's weapon, all magazines, all grenades. He's on the radio. He's promoted by General Nickerson to corporal on the radio, and ultimately Purple Heart and the Navy Cross.
Wow.
Now he's down in Beaufort, South Carolina today, and I talk to Tommy a couple of times a year. And he went with me over to First Force, and he ran the bush after this was over. So the 6th guy was a guy named Giuseppe Ventresca, who had come from Italy. He was an Italian citizen, but he was in 3rd Force. We had a couple of those guys. And he took a round between the eyes, and it went under his scalp and out the back of his head, and it knocked him unconscious. So Tommy thought he was dead. When they were removing the bodies, they saw that Ventresca was alive. So Ventresca ends up with a splitting headache, no pun intended, and the Purple Heart, you know. But those are the kind of stories that you come back and tell, but you tell them amongst yourself. Everyone knew what happened. You know? So,
well, those are the stories that this generation, they need to hear. The intestinal fortitude, the overcoming adversity, the pure human will and strength that you don't see it when you're there, because you're just trying to survive and you're just trying to. But when you come home and somebody hears it, because it's like, I mean, I even myself, just like, wow, I don't think I could do that. But
I'll tell you, I used to teach at Command and Staff at Quantico.
Okay.
And these were majors, lieutenant colonels that were there for a year at school. And we talk about the strength of unity of the unit. And I said, well, I don't normally tell these war stories, but I'll tell you of a situation that happened to us, and you can take your own inference from it. But we're out west of the Haivon Pass, and this is in October of 1969. And we're setting up an OP so that we're looking over a dried up stream bed that a trail had run along the edge of the stream. And 4 guys appear. So we had practice in the rear, and in the rear, when we went back, there was constant what we call IA drills, immediate action.
Immediate action drills. Yep.
You'd have all your gear on, load up with blanks, and other guys would shoot at you from different positions. So you would react to contact right, contact left, contact rear, because everyone had a role to play in who would peel off, who would set a claymore, who were your flank security guys, all of these things that you would drill day after day. So Kaufman had taught us about an ambush called the Gurkha style ambush. He had trained with the Gurkhas. So the Gurkha style ambush works like this. You have to have a trail that takes a sharp left or a sharp right. Okay? Terrain dictates everything you can do, terrain and weather. So we're watching these four guys, and I'm explaining this to this class of lieutenant colonels. So you got four guys coming toward you. Who is leading that group of four? It's not the first guy. He's the point man. He's being told where to go. And it's not the last guy. He's tail end Charlie, so he's protecting the rear. And all the heads are nodding, and I said, so it's going to be number 2 or 3. So you're watching them more intently than the other two. Who's got the best haircut? Who's got a sidearm? Who's taller? Who's more well-fed? Whose uniform is better? To see who the staff NCO or officer, if there is one, may be. So we decided it's going to be number 3. So we set up and we put Donnell Kegler, he was from Nacogdoches, Texas. He's our automatic rifleman, at the right angle of this trail. He's looking straight down the trail. We're all on the right side of the trail, and Bishop is on the left side, unarmed. So when number 3 comes by, he's going to tackle him out. Kegler will see him pass. Everyone opens up, and we kill 1, 2, and 4. Now we've got our guy, right? And we're getting an emergency extract because we've got an intel source.
Man, can you imagine the unarmed guy? I can't even go tackle so we can get a prisoner of war, a prisoner for intel, and hopefully my team doesn't shoot me while I'm going.
Well, yeah. So here's what happens, right? So we're looking, and everyone has to have visual with everyone else.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's pouring down rain.
Oh.
And they disappear from the bank to the bank. They're going to come up where we are on the other side of the stream. Furman gives a freeze signal, and everyone freezes. So here comes number 1, 2, 3, 4, then a pause, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 64. It was an NVA company on the move. That was their point element, right? So we're frozen. Nobody moves. Nobody. I mean, you felt your heart was pounding so bad it would give you away. And they moved off, and they moved up and over a hill down into a ravine. We gave them about 15 minutes, not knowing if there was another group coming behind them. And when we got together, every guy was shaking like a leaf from the adrenaline rush. But the strength was, no one stood up and said, let's take them. No one surrendered. No one did anything stupid, to cough, burp, fart, anything. You just remained face down. You were just sucking mud, hoping to God that no one would see that you were all camming up and that you couldn't be seen. You were hoping. And we called in A6s because they were all weather, and they bombed the shit out of them. That's another story about
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you just did you call artillery or air support in,
bomb
like
damage assessment with that crowd? But the strength of the team was everyone was trained to do exactly what you were supposed to do. And that's how we survived, was the strength of the team. It wasn't one guy, but as you know, in combat, you may not gravitate to the platoon sergeant or the platoon leader. It may be some lance corporal who is a streetwise guy and is selfish in that he wants to stay alive and he will keep you alive. And these are just lessons learned. So when as you see people come into the company, new guys, you're looking for these guys who are kind of street smart, you know, and by their actions and their words, they become dependable. Other guys, you'd say, get the fuck out of here. You
Yeah.
don't want anything to do. You know, they're all, you wonder how the hell they got there. And we had a couple of those guys too.
Every unit's got a few here and there
Sure.
of that. But you're at common sense. That fifth principle of patrolling dictates everything. Common sense, and those that had the common sense is usually the ones that you did grab. At least I gravitated to. I always looked up to the common sense. Not okay. We got to follow orders, but sometimes those orders. Hey, we got to use our common sense when we're going into this room, not just
when they
textbook.
get some of these guys to come into the company, they were looking for two types of guys really. Athletes, because they were physically fit, but they were disciplined.
Yeah.
You know, if you're doing football or basketball, you're doing repetitive drills all the time, or guys who were outdoor guys who would hunt and fish and do it solo. So they had bushcraft and they knew how to survive if they had to, and they were dependable. So those were the kind of guys that fortunately we had in the team. Pegler grew up on a farm. Uh, Bishop had gone to school in Texas. Uh, Kevin had gone to military school. Furman had declined 30 some scholarships to play basketball because he was a skilled basketball athlete, and he turned it down, went into the Marine Corps. So these guys were, without them saying anything, you could tell that they were disciplined and dependable guys. And that was the success of the team. And it goes on through other units too. As you know,
Sure.
you go into these things and you think, the CO is, this way, but the XO is a great guy, or the first sergeant is a great guy, and he doesn't have to say anything. He's already proven himself, and when you find out that he's looking out for you, you'll gravitate to him for the right answer.
Yep. Always.
So that was the fun of it, and the fun for me was I get wounded in July 1st of 1970, medevac to Yokosuka, Japan, went home, went back to Boston, had orders back there. And then my company commander had gotten out of Vietnam, went to the Pentagon, went to headquarters Marine Corps, and came up because a friend of his was running in the Boston Marathon. And he contacted me and he said, "Hey, what are you doing after you get out of the Navy?" He said, "Why don't you take a commission in the Marine Corps, be an infantry officer?" I thought, "Oh, geez, are you kidding?" And he said, "No." He said, "You've got the skills, and we could use you." I mean, it was a tough time back in the '70s with racial disharmony and a lot of things that were going on. So Boston was not the place to be if you were a conservative individual. The liberals were firebombing the campuses. There were active duty officers protesting in the streets about the war in Vietnam. So I went down to Charleston, South Carolina, and went to the College of Charleston and graduated with a degree in history. And then went to the basic school at Quantico and got orders to 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, where my company commander was now my battalion commander. And he was a lieutenant colonel. So I did 2 years at Pendleton. Then I went to Okinawa and had the deep reconnaissance platoon with the 3rd Recon Battalion. And did that for a year plus. And then I went to Camp Pendleton, went to the School of Infantry and was chief of tactics, and then became the 3. Then Quantico for a year at Amphibious Warfare School. Then back to 3-1 as a company commander again. And then I left there and went to Blunt Island, Florida, and was the operations officer for what we call the MPS program, Maritime Preposition Shipping. So they had all this container stuff on these 13 ships named for Marine Medal of Honor recipients. And that was a 2-year tour. Went up to Quantico, uh, training and education, then to the depot in San Diego, and retired out in 92, became the director of the Command Museum uh, at the depot for 5 years, then went to the Citadel for 8 years as Marine TAC officer there, and then went up to Quantico to write doctrine for the Marine Corps. But I had been interviewed by this Navy chaplain. His name is Ray Stubbe, and he was jump qualified. So we called him the Leaping Deacon. And his interest was in Marine Special Operations. So he had interviewed Alex Lee and myself, and he put my name in this book. He wrote about it. And he sent me a copy of this book called Inside Force Recon by Ray Stubbe and Michael Lee Lanning. And I wrote back to him when I got this signed copy, and I said, hey, appreciate it, but it's too bad that no one who had ever served, because he never did, in Third Force or First Force has ever written about it. Well, I'm at my desk at Quantico, and the phone rings. I said, Major Norton, can I help you? He said, yeah, is this Doc Norton? And I said, it is. He said, my name is Owen Locke, and I'm the vice president of Random House. And I'd like to know if you'd be interested in writing about your experiences in Vietnam. I said, Mr. Locke, I am a busy guy right now. I really appreciate the call, but you have a nice day, and thanks a lot. And I hung up. And he called me right back, and he said, hey, pal, I don't think you understand what I'm offering you. He said, on average, I get 1,500 manuscripts a month from people who think they have a story.
And he's calling you.
Yeah, 1 in 10,000 will be published by Random. So I said, well, you want me to write a book? And he said, yeah. We'll give you 2 years to write it. I said, oh, boy. So finally I said, okay. But
you're like, I shouldn't have opened my mouth that
I know
that you haven't had someone who served write a book.
So I called Alex Lee and Kaufman. I said, look, they want me to write this book, but I want to bounce it off you to make sure what I'm saying is accurate. No secrets being told, but it'll just be my observation of what happened to me with you guys in command. They said, great. So they sent me a contract and an advance, and I thought, God, if I cash this check, I'm going to have to write the book.
You're stuck. Yep. Yeah.
So
you're stuck.
That book came out, and it became a bestseller. And then they wanted a sequel, which was First Force.
What was the first? Tell us again, just so people know.
Oh yeah, well,
what was the first one?
Force Recon Diary, 1969. It's still in print. They all are. And then I mean,
because people are always going to want to hear these stories from guys who have been there and done that. I mean, there's so many historians who write books about what you guys have done, but at the end of the day, they didn't live it. I think people always want to hear the stories firsthand from the guys who lived it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I told Random House. They said, listen, you write it and we'll publish it. And I said, okay. There are far more interesting people than me that I have met along the way whose stories need to be told. So I wrote One Tough Marine about Don Hamlin, wounded in Korea twice, lost a leg in a parachute jump over Camp Pendleton, then went to Vietnam and ran a SOG team for 21 months before he was wounded 2 more times and sent home. He's still alive. He's 91 years old, and he's living out in Oceanside, California. And then I wrote about my diving partner, Maurice Jacks, who was at that time he was the first Force Recon first sergeant. He was Jesse Puller was his CO in Hawaii. He taught Puller's son how to swim. I mean, it's a long story, but that book came out called Sergeant Major U.S. Marines. Then I wrote on Len Maffioli, who was a 3-war Marine on Iwo Jima. Then he was part of Task Force Drysdale, and he was one of 18 Marines to escape from a Chinese POW camp during the Korean War, and that's called Grown Korean War. And he was in Vietnam during Tet. So Iwo Jima, Task Force Drysdale and Tet. He paid his dues. He just died a couple of years ago at, geez, I don't know how old Len was, probably like 93 or 4. So, and it brings us kind of up to today. I've written a bunch of other books, the Encyclopedia of American War Heroes, uh, a Marine POW Remembers Hell, about a Marine who was taken in the Philippines and did almost 4 years from Katanabuan POW camp to a Mitsubishi copper mine and survived all this. He's gone now, Charles Ream Jackson. And then because of being here in Fredericksburg, I've done a book on the Marines capturing John Brown at Harper's Ferry and the First Battle of Manassas. A lot of people don't know there was a Marine battalion at the Battle of Manassas. And then I just finished another one on the Laurel Brigade at Brandy Station, the largest cavalry engagement of the Civil War, 20,000 guys on horseback going at it. And then this last book that will come out this fall, and I think you get a kick out of this one. I've written a play along with a guy named Harry Kantrovich. Harry is a nationally known playwright, and he did a play based on Tom Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation Speaks. So they had 30-some actors and actresses who assumed the role of people from World War II that wrote or received these letters home. Because people from my generation and earlier, they wanted tangible things. They wanted letters or photographs that they could put up, on the refrigerator door kind of thing, or have a shoebox full of these things. And now it's all on your phone. So I did the question and the answer at the end of the play on marine operations during World War II in the Pacific. And seated dead center, front row, is Gary Sinise. Didn't know that he was going to come out there, but Harry had been talking with Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks and Gary Sinise about this Greatest Generation Speaks because of Hank's role in Saving Private Ryan, that kind of thing. So he and I became pretty good friends. And he said, I'd love to do a book on Force Recon. The problem is there wasn't a lot of dialogue because you guys didn't speak in the bush. But what we'll do is we're going to write a play, and I want you to write the book, and we'll call it Voices from Vietnam. So that play is going to premiere here in Virginia, Veterans Day weekend. And I wrote a book. It's 355 pages with 167 photographs.
Oh, wow.
And it's general, admiral, Medal of Honor recipient, prisoner of war, MIA families, nurses, particularly nurses, Australian infantrymen, Army, dust-off pilots, Marine reconnaissance guys. 61 people came forward with their stories. So that book will be published by Academica Press, and it's called, same as the play, Voices from Vietnam. So the Greatest Generation Speak play is now in 179 theaters around the country. These are all like community theaters. And we think this will do twice that because of the interest now from Vietnam vets. Unfortunately, the World War II guys started about 101 years old, you know?
Yeah, we were honored to have a World War II veteran, which I
Battle
believe,
of Bastogne veteran we had from the 101st. It was just amazing.
And I believe, Chris, it's probably the last interview we ever did, So you're doing a great service by getting these guys' stories out there. Without 15 books, 2 plays, a lot of these stories would be completely forgotten or written about by someone who, doesn't know as much as you. And also the fact that they're able to connect with that veteran with, veteran connection and
you guys know
a little bit more.
These things aren't taught in school anymore. They don't talk about World War II, let alone Korea or Vietnam.
No, we learn about like the Pythagorean theorem and things that as a 37-year-old had never used in my life.
It's more like wokeism and
Yeah.
transgender
Ah,
Oh,
squad
absolutely.
day, you know?
I'm too old for that, but because it's like God knows what's being. I just look back on what I was taught, and I was like, I don't know how much of this did I use. I don't
well,
know.
and that's why it is just it's so important to have this out there, to have
Yeah,
the history and the books and people and even though I hate social media and I hate all the new technology, podcasts are important now,
yeah.
and there are
You know,
many
I've
veterans
told
that do it.
people that would care to listen. I said, and I've got one right here. You can see this thing. It's a little pocket recorder, right?
Oh wow! Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's so
yeah,
okay. So yeah, the task cam. I
yeah.
didn't even. I thought you were showing me like a flip phone at first,
That's
and
what
then I
I thought it
realized
was.
what
I
that.
thought it was one
Yeah,
of the
then I
old ones.
realized what it was because it's
No,
like yeah,
no,
the
no.
recording
They cost
device.
about,
Yeah,
$80.
yeah,
If
those are
your
great. Yeah,
grandparents or your parents are still alive, you should record them. Same thing
yes,
we're doing right now. What was it like growing up?
yeah.
What were your chores? Who who were your mentors that guided you to whatever you did, whether you
So
were in the
if I
army?
could just tell you, I mean, we just had Pablo Schreiber on the podcast, the actor in 13 Hours, and he said he did that with his father before he died, and
Yeah,
it's true, man. I mean,
it,
yeah, I think about it, like how many recorded hours are there of my dad? There's none of my grandpa. I mean, truthfully, when I die and when Chris dies, which hopefully a very long time from here, there's a fucking shit ton of hours of us running our mouths. But yeah, like my dad, it's not out there. You're very right. You're very
Well,
right.
just think if your great grandfather had been at Gettysburg, how valuable would it be to have recording, not
yeah.
just a video, but a recording of him talking about 3 days in July in 1863? You'd break out a bottle of bourbon on the 4th of July and say, let's listen to Grandpa tell us that story, whether he was Confederate or Union.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing in World War One or Korea or Vietnam, or if guys are smart, they do the same thing that I'm doing with Desert Storm in Afghanistan. Voices from Desert Storm or voices from Afghanistan, because once that individual dies, falls off the bar stool of the VFW, that primary source is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything else is just hearsay, and tell people that listen to your show, record your family, have recording of it. You'll never regret it. You know,
And
it's that important.
yes, Pablo made a great point with that. My father passed away. It's been about a month and a couple weeks now, and you're saying that as well. Yeah, I do. I like, man, I wish I would have everything that
Alive,
every
still alive.
voicemail that I have, it's saved.
Yeah,
But that's a few. I mean, man, I wish I would have sat down like Pablo did with his father before he passed, and they went through. They just talked about life and
well, here's
him
the danger
growing
with
up.
that phone. Don't have 3 beers and drop it in the hot tub,
No,
because then it's lost.
then it's gone. Then
Download
it's
it and
gone.
Well, you
save it.
could yeah have it on the cloud. That's the good thing with technology too,
Absolutely.
though. Yeah, you
Yep.
could have backups of stuff
I,
pretty
I
easily.
I did have one. I'm going back. I know we're and
Yeah,
I'll keep
sure
you
thing.
a little bit. I wanted to know because we talked a little bit about you coming back and we hear all the horror stories and I believe them that how Vietnam veterans were treated when they came home. Was that your experience as well when you came back, or
Well, I'll
was
tell
it
you.
different?
When I came back, I don't think I was really ready to sit down with my grandfather was gone, my grandmother, my mother, and father when they said, "Well, how was it?" And I said, "I
Wow.
really, I really, I'm
Yeah.
not ready to tell you how it was because you're not going to believe it, and I really don't want to relive it right now." And I had a couple of buddies who had gone before me into the Marine Corps and were up at Quezon and Huy City, and they got me out of there. The night that I came home, the next morning, we went up, started in Maine, and climbed Mount Katahdin, Mount Washington, the Liberty Range for about a week. And then I went back home and said, okay,
Yeah.
I'm okay, and you can ask me anything you want. So that was no problem. I did not get spit upon, but um, there was a general feeling in Boston that you did not walk around in uniform.
Yeah.
That was a non-starter. I'm sorry, shut this off. Oh, that's my buddy Kevin that I was just telling you about. Hey, you there?
Get him on the show.
Oh,
Get him on the show,
I'm
man.
telling these guys big lies about you.
Oh, speak up. Oh, man. Can you hear him?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Wait a minute, I'm going to turn this thing.
I
Can you hear me
don't
now?
know if it'll be able to capture that well.
Hey, can you speak now?
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
we're not getting.
they can hear
We're not
you.
getting. We're not.
Yeah, we're not
getting.
really hearing him. I think
We're
it
not hearing
cancels
you,
out a
bud.
little bit, to be
I was
honest.
telling them about you getting wounded, but I didn't tell them that you were shot by your own men.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting it.
Hey, listen. Hey, I'll call you back, okay?
It, it's one of those weird things. Even if he's on speaker, we're not hearing it. I actually, you weren't here for this episode, but I tried to play Josie Scott something off my phone, and I don't think it recorded at all.
Didn't work.
So yeah, I don't think we got it. But that is, I will say that's cool that you still keep in touch with those guys and they're alive and well.
Did he shoot himself? Is that what happened? No, Doc, I'm giving you shit. Just give him shit. So the ranger said, "Stop shooting yourself, and you're gonna live a lot."
Well, he was still carrying around in his leg and around. It hit him in the arm and going up his shoulder. And I said, "You don't want them to take those out because one, you can charge girls like a buck to feel the bullet, but when they take it out, it's going to be an M16 round, and you'll have a lot of explaining to do."
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That's
hilarious.
That black sense of humor that we have from times like that.
It's what gets you. It's what gets you through, and it makes it fun to give each other shit all the time, every day. And Kirk and I go way. I still give Tadpole shit when I talk to him. We do. He'll text me. I'll text him, and the first thing is just giving each other shit before we even start getting in a conversation. But yeah, that's all I got as far as question, unless Ian's got stuff. But I just wanted to hear your story, and I think it was incredible, man. The Vietnam veterans were the cream of the crop to me. That's what made me want to join. I used to read about the LRP teams, the Ranger teams. That's what made the HTK teams. I want when they started wearing the black beret back. That's what made me want to go to 75th, to the Ranger Regiment, but all you guys that were doing those long range reconnaissance patrols and being out in the bush and just undermanned and outgunned, and you're still winning fights. To me, that was true heroism. So,
I've told people, to me, any guy that got out of one of those helicopters and did a week in the bush probably deserves the Bronze Star.
At the very least.
And there were guys that did incredible things and got absolutely no recognition, and guys that did nothing and got recognition for things they didn't do.
And it's that probably I don't know if it was more then or not, but I would argue that it's probably more so in today's Army than it was back then. I'd argue, and I do believe that yes, every year it does get easier. It does. They all had to go back when it was hard. Well, there's some honesty to that. It was a lot harder when you went in than when I went in. That's just how it is. And it's going to be 20 years from now. Yours is going to be extremely hard. Mine's going to be harder than it was 20 years. We just seem to be getting easier.
I don't even know what it's going to look like, by the way, 20 years from now.
20
years from now, is it going to be pure AI and just like robots?
That's what I think.
Anybody
else? I'm still, that's sort of looking at you, but just the track record has shown that it does. It's got, and I went in the military twice. I got out, I went back in, I went through basic training again. This was just 3 years later. And I could tell the difference between 3 years from infantry basic training at Fort Benning to infantry basic training 3 years later. And it was significantly easier 3 years later in the 90s.
Let me ask you this. How old are you guys now? How old are you?
I'm 53.
Well, you guys,
I'm 53. Ian's like 20.
Yeah, I'm 37. And if you don't know, it's funny. I should point this out. I've never served. There's always like some smart ass in the comments that are like, why is Ian on this podcast? What has he ever done? Like, I've never claimed to have served or anything. So Chris has done some cool shit. I just get to talk.
20 years from now, I want you to imagine you're sitting in the VFW vault explaining what you did to a robot.
To a robot.
Yeah.
Because exactly. I agree with Ian, man. I think that's what's going to be 20 years from now is people on computers and and the robots are fighting the wars everywhere.
I mean, it's sort of happening already with drone strike operators. From what I hear, most of them are operating out in Nevada. And I mean, It's got to be a weird feeling because we've spoke about this before. I'm sure even those guys have some type of PTSD that's different or post-traumatic stress than like what you guys are used to, in that it's like they're playing a video game, but there's actual casualties.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a quote from a buddy of mine, and it was the vociferous mouthings of combat can never replace going in harm's way.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting in an air-conditioned trailer with a joystick, that's a whole different ballgame than rounds snapping over your head.
And
So
yeah.
it's all a matter of a frame of reference. Yeah, you're going to make some decisions of firing a Hellfire missile at a car full of kids, but when you're out there for 8, 9, 10 days and guys are trying to kill you every day,
Yeah.
you tell an entirely different story. So
But
it's just,
actually, I was just going to
It
say the
is,
weird
yeah.
thing though is like I think for that guy, right, for you guys, you could justify it in that you say, "Hey, they were shooting at me. I had to shoot back. My life was at stake." If you're in an air conditioned room with a joystick, it probably weighs on your conscience a little bit more that you're like, I was my life was not at stake, but I had to, take out other people.
I'll tell you, and I'll share this with you. I don't think, having been in a number of firefights, you ever thought of this guy's trying to kill me. You're thinking this guy is trying to kill my buddies,
Yeah.
not you. You don't take it personally. You're trying to save them from some asshole trying to kill them.
And Doc, I don't know if you felt the same as but I even I've said this to people that ask me. I was never angry. I just taking care of business. I was never angry. It was never. Maybe it was because it was fast paced, or but I was never pissed off at the other guy. I was always just, okay, you're dead. You're dead. You're lose. You're gonna lose. We're gonna win this. We're gonna win this fight. Boone, you're safe. You're safe. Rowan,
My
you're
wife
safe.
is from Australia, and I brag about her mother. Her mother, my mother-in-law, Maria Jackman, was a young girl at the Battle of Tarawa. The family owned the general store in Tarawa, and she credits the Marines with saving her life and her sister and her mom and dad.
Wow.
So we talk about this. We Skype her every Tuesday night. She's in south of Melbourne, Australia. And the point I was trying to reach, I don't know if my mind has been derailed all of a sudden, but these stories need to be told and retold. Ones that are valid stories with a lesson, with an end result of why are you telling me
lessons learned. Lessons learned. It should always
exactly.
be a lessons learned story. Definitely. I agree.
But I appreciate what you guys do because you have a following and people will listen to these men and women that have just regular stories. To them, it's just a regular story. And I told my wife, I said, if someone moved down the road from us and they were from North Vietnam, I'd be fascinated to go and talk to them. I wouldn't hate them.
Yeah.
They were fighting for what they believed in, just like we were. And I'd welcome to have them come over. Glad to have them.
I agree. Wars are only started because both sides think they're right, and I've said that in the show 8 million times. Both sides think they're right. That's why wars are started. And I've sat across table with the Taliban guy where we're a Taliban and we're just trying to figure it out so we don't hurt each other. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to make the best decision I can with him, and he's doing the same with me, and we're just feeling each other out. And guess what? We both walked away. He was giving us intel, so we needed him to cooperate, right? Not just kill him, because we were trying to bring him on as a to give us intel and bring on as an asset. But looking at him looking at me. He's not letting me touch his Quran. I have my Bible, my little same hip pocket Bible that we all get in the military, and me handing it to him and say, "Hey, here's my Bible. We are the same, brother." Even if and having my interpreter say that to him, but just like, hey, we really are. We're just fighting each other because you think you're right and I think I'm right, and let's just get this done so we can continue and both live another day. And but yeah, you're right. As soon as they start shooting at you, it's business. It's all business. Let's win. We're going to win this fight.
No one was. I think if there was any anger, it was someone got badly hurt, and you were mad at them because they didn't get down, they stood up, or they made some stupid move and caused their own problems.
You're right. It's frustration, disappointment. The adrenaline and anger, I say, was more conviction. When I was like those sons of bitches, it wasn't those damn terrorists. Or it was more conviction. It was all right. You want to try to kill me? Let's
Yeah,
get it on.
come
And,
on.
and man, I admire you guys. I admire the hell out of all you hunter killer teams, all you recon teams, all you alert teams in Vietnam. That is what I read and studied, and that's that was what I wanted to be. And that because I thought you guys were the biggest badasses. Because man, that's people don't realize how bad that is. Just sucking out there in the bush, even if you're not getting hit, you're not getting attacked. Just being out there in the humidity with rotten crotch, and you've got monkey butt because you got so just so bad
Well,
out there.
I had a good friend, Robert Craig Flager, was killed and eaten by a Bengal tiger. Yeah,
Yes, he would.
that's another story, and that's in the book. So yeah, when you've got
Wow.
NVA and a tiger in the same grid square, it's going to be an interesting night.
Yeah, I didn't have to worry about tigers. Yeah, that's I can't even touch that. You win. You
Hey,
win.
you know what I was going to ask you,
Holy
and wanted to
shit.
make sure that I get in here is I said this to Kirk when he was on. I mean, we have so many Navy SEALs on the show, Army Rangers, Marines. We've even had Kirk, explain this because we've had Recon Marines, but Kirk was the only Force Recon
Force
Marine.
Recon,
There's
yeah.
not as many of you guys. So for the audience, what do you want people to know about just Force Recon Marines in general? What should everybody know?
Well, there's a difference between Recon Battalion and Force Recon, and it's very simple. Um, I'll give you Vietnam as an example. The Marine Corps had a MAF, a Marine Amphibious Force Commander. That's a three-star general. And for us, that was General Nickerson, Herman
Yeah.
Nickerson. He rates by his rank a force, that's where it gets its name from, a Force Reconnaissance Company to be his eyes and ears. Your recon battalion works for the division commanding general.
Okay.
So you have a concentric circle. Inside that smaller circle is the division. They have artillery, they have air, they have naval support within that. Let's call it a 50-kilometer circle. The MAF commander, he's out there at 150. So he wants to know where the best LZs are, where the enemy infiltration, access, and egress routes are. And he sends us out to get him intel to help prevent troops coming in to get into the division in a circle.
Okay.
So the Force Recon name comes from being the Force Commander's Reconnaissance Company. So you had First Force Recon for the 1st Marine Division, for Second Force, 2nd Marine Division out of Lejeune. They never went to Vietnam. Second Force didn't. Now, guys who had served in Second Force, they'd get orders and they'd go over. And Third Force, they also had a fourth and fifth force, but they were in the States as training companies. Okay. So the only guys really were First Force and Third Force. And I happen to be involved with both of them.
I guess that I have one more with that. I have a question that just came up. Then I'm sorry, Doc,
That's all
because
right.
is the vetting, and I asked this to Kirk, and he explained it. Maybe you can explain it a little bit better. Is the vetting or NDOC any different for Force Recon and Battalion Recon? And maybe I'm starting a pissing contest between the two, but that was one thing I never. When I got recon guys together, when I was with the agency, we'd have force guys, then we'd have battalion, and they would rib each other just like, if I have a tabbed ranger versus an actual real ranger from 70, we're gonna give each other a little shit. But there's still respect there. Is it
It's no
safe?
different than a football player with AFL or NFL.
It's
I'm
okay.
better, you're better. You know, here's the deal: if you're jump or scuba qualified, once you get on the ground, you're an infantry guy.
It always
So
goes back to the
really,
infantry. Yeah.
the guys to us that were
Yeah.
insane were the grunts, because you were clanging and banging everywhere you went. We had the luxury of hiding,
Hiding. Yeah.
and we did not want to make contact. We did not normally go out to make contact. We went out to find them, find out what they were doing, what their intent might be, the direction they were taking, how many there were, that kind of thing. But the grunts went out, and it was like reconnaissance by fire, and so um, I mean, my hat went off to these guys that were there at house fighting in Hawaii City. Uh, Guys at Quezon, the 77 days of incoming rocket and artillery. I mean, get hit with rockets and artillery, but not like Quezon, nothing like it. So um, every guy has a different story. The adage is you're five guys on a SWAT team and you're going into a house to get a bad guy. What the first guy going through that door sees and what the last guy sees are two different stories,
different,
and it's the same exact minute that it happens. So it's the same kind of thing. So if you're a recon battalion, they went out and conducted the same kind of missions that we did.
Yeah.
Force was just given, we went further out because that was our mission.
That was your mission.
That's
the
it.
circle was bigger. I
That
got you.
helps explain it. Yeah.
Actually, that does, because
Yeah.
it's one thing I've just always like, well, who's doing what? And because Rudy Reyes is a friend, he's battalion recon, and I worked a lot. And then you got Kirk, who was
Oh, he's a lightweight.
and so Rudy, I say the same thing to Rudy too. Don't worry about it. I give Rudy shit. He's close, but we're those close enough that we just give each other shit constantly.
There you go. That's great.
But we're very tight. And one of his old team leaders was with me with the agency, so I knew Rudy before Rudy became Hollywood Rudy. And now now I can even give him more shit because he's Hollywood Rudy. But he's worked his ass off to get to that point. That's what he wanted to do. God bless him, man. Whatever he wants to do. But Doc, man, this was great. Unless Ian's got more, I ain't got it. I mean,
yeah. Only other thing I actually was going to mention, it's not a question or anything, was when you mentioned the friendship with Gary Sinise.
Yeah.
I have to say, everything I've heard about that guy is so positive. I've never met him. I don't personally know him. But one story I can tell you is that friend of the show, Mike Schlitz, guy lost both his arms in combat, both burnt his legs in combat, burnt most of his body in combat in IED. I met him actually at a charity event at a run, and they were supposed to build Mike a smart home so that he could operate at his home without any issues, with his disabilities. And I obviously don't want to say the name of the charity. I'm not trying to get sued here, but they basically dropped the ball. They didn't do anything for him, and they're a big name. They advertise on TV all the time and have all these great stories. And I mean, I just know from Mike, they didn't do it for him. And Gary Sinise Foundation, basically, Gary called Mike and he's like, I don't care what they were supposed to do. We're going to take care of you. And from what I've heard, that's who Gary Sinise is. And it was also really sad to hear that his son, a young kid, just recently
died
died
of cancer in January.
Yeah. So
I see he was very, I say, nondescript. He just sat in the audience. It wasn't a meet. He went by himself and just sat there and listened to the play. And then he got up and left. And then he contacted Harry and said, this is really great. You guys did a great job, and word of mouth, these things spread from community theater to community theater. So when Harry contacted him and said, hey, we're doing a play called Voices from Vietnam, he said, I'm very, very interested in this. I'd like to see that. So there's another guy named Justin Lehue, and he is good friends with Harry Smith, the NBC guy that tells all these stories like Charles Perrault used to do. You familiar with Harry Smith?
I'm familiar with Charles Carroll, but not Harry Smith.
Charles Perrault used to do On the Road.
Yep.
And he would tell all these stories of, some blacksmith in Montana that, great stories. So Harry Smith does the same kind of thing. And Justin, who's also a Navy Cross recipient here in Fredericksburg, said, give me a flash drive of your book, and I'm going to share it with Harry Smith and see if he won't come out and cover the premiere of this play, because he has expressed interest in this. So, these things just spread kind of word of mouth. So we'll see how it all shakes out here after the first weekend of November.
Well, I know that we'll push whatever you want us to push at, whatever's first and foremost. And
as far as voices from Vietnam, and
okay.
What I'll do is I'll send you the flyer that we've got, which is pretty much going to be the cover of the book. And when the book comes out, I'll get your copy.
Oh man, be
Excellent.
honored. I'd be honored. Yeah, whatever we can do to help, whether you're Kirk Spradley's friend or not, Tadpole's friend or not, I'll still help you, man. I won't hold that again. I won't hold that against.
We're going to have a lot of people there who contributed to these stories. They will be there. So we'll have as many of them sign the book on the chapter that they
cool.
are in.
That's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, those are cool things to have in your library, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I was going to say to the audience, especially if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, like, leave a comment, any of that stuff. And real quick, totally unrelated to this interview, I just wanted to say this before we wrap up the show for the audience. And I don't know how familiar you really are with what we do, Bruce, but beyond just having veterans on and Second Amendment guys on, contractors on, we kind of expand outside of that. We'll have a lot of rock stars on and that type of thing. We've had Corey Taylor from Slipknot. We've had Edsel Dope from Dope and, his work with Static X. And we just had Evan Seinfeld from Biohazard. And so a lot of those interviews get picked up by all these rock sites, and it really has expanded our base outside of just this niche that we have. And one of those sites who's always picked up our stuff was We Are the Pit. And I just became aware this week that site is calling it quits. They're basically, I guess, moving on to other endeavors. So I just wanted to say to those guys, if anyone happens to be listening, thanks so much for always picking up our stuff.
Yeah.
And properly crediting us. It's weird. I mean, you probably know this, Bruce, with the media in terms of print media and all that, everything has gone digital, but even a lot of those sites are shutting down. So, I just wanted to give a shout out to those guys, and whatever you guys are doing next, I think they'll be fine. I believe they're owned by Roadrunner Records, who has some real heavyweights on that label who have kept things going. Nickelback for sure, and then Slipknot. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Right.
And when the play is out, we will definitely promote it out. And if any of our audience are in Virginia, make sure you go see it. Even if you're a little outside of Virginia or outside of the area, take the trip out, and they'll probably get to meet you too, right? So
hey, listen, if your travels take you to Virginia, let me know. You're always welcome.
Thank you. Every once in a while, when I'm speaking, I'll get out to Norfolk every once in a while, man, or Chesapeake in that area. So and get up to Northern Virginia. Is that where it's up in Northern Virginia, or is it down?
Yeah, we're just south of Washington by 50 miles. Quantico's 18 miles.
You're Quantico. Yeah, you're Quantico, yeah. Fredericksburg. I know that area very. It's been a long time, but I know that area very well. So,
well, you've got the National Museum of the Marine Corps there. It's fabulous.
Oh,
if you get a chance, come and see it.
Definitely will, Doc. Well, God bless you, Doc. And again, welcome home, brother, and thanks for your service, Doc.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Sure. You guys take care. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Battle Line Podcast. But we're always posting new content on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Battle Line Podcast and on Twitter at Battle Line Pod. That's an order. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes up every Tuesday. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.